Hello. So in this video, we're going to talk about Brian Trenchard-Smith's film Leprechaun 4. This is Trenchard-Smith's second entry in the Leprechaun franchise, following Leprechaun 3. And this one makes about as much sense as Leprechaun 3 does. So one of the things that's really striking about Leprechaun 3 is it seems like Trenchard-Smith was basically just like, let's abandon any sense of this being a horror movie, and we're just going to have fun with it, right? We'll put the Leprechaun in Vegas, some random shit's going to happen, a lot of it's not going to make any sense. Cool. Let's have a good time. Good enough. Leprechaun 4 is not exactly that. It is a little more towards the horror side of things, but it's also a sci-fi film, right? It's the Leprechaun in space. Why? We don't know. And that's actually that's my favorite thing about this movie. So according to Wikipedia, the Wikipedia article for Leprechaun 4, the AV Club wrote that the outer space setting comes off as a desperate ploy to continue a horror series without having to pay any attention to continuity or the laws of reality. Now, the laws of reality, whatever. Who cares? It's a horror movie about a leprechaun, right? It's a horror movie, and so the laws of reality are already a limited application at best, and it's about a leprechaun, which is a magical creature from folklore. The laws of reality, if that's your standard for a horror movie about a magical creature from folklore, you may have misunderstood the assignment slightly. But the continuity element actually is really, really fascinating here, because there kind of isn't any. The only real element of continuity between Leprechaun 4 and the first 3 films of the franchise is that the Leprechaun, he's played by Warwick Davis in all 3, so that core character, the actor remains the same. He loves gold, and he will kill anybody who gets in the way of him having it. That's about the only element of continuity. Oh, and he kills people. Well, I guess that's implicit in he will kill anyone who gets in the way of it. He likes killing people. Other than that, this film has fuck all to do with anything that's occurred in the first 3, right? So, in the first film, we have a pretty clear sense of how the leprechaun has gotten to this remote farmhouse in fucking North Dakota or wherever it is. This remote place, right? We have a clear sense of that because the Irish guy at the beginning who has stolen the leprechaun's gold, the leprechaun has snuck into that guy's suitcase and come back to his house to kill the guy and his wife and to get his gold back. Cool. We've got an explanation for what the leprechaun is doing there. In Leprechaun 2, we start with the leprechaun in Ireland. Fine, makes sense. Perfect. Cool. Leprechauns are Irish. Part of Irish folklore. Then in the United States, he comes out of a tree, supposedly sent from the people of Killarney, I think is where the leprechaun is from, to Houdini. Cool. Whatever. Fine. It's an explanation. Is it an explanation that makes a lot of sense? No. But it's something, right? We know how the leprechaun got there. And we know why he's there. He's been pursuing the female bloodline of this guy that had defied him as a slave around 990 CE to marry his female descendant 1,000 years in the future. Now, Leprechaun 2 is actually really important in terms of the lack of continuity with Leprechaun 4. And the reason is because Leprechaun 2 centers around the leprechaun getting married. And the rules of that marriage, which as far as I know, and I'm not an expert on Leprechaun lore, but as far as I know, Leprechaun 2 has made up these rules. The leprechaun can get married on his 1,000th birthday and like subsequent thousands, so 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, etc. So he can get married on a 1,000th birthday. In order for him to marry someone, that person has to sneeze 3 times with no one saying, God bless you. Why? That's never explained in Leprechaun 2. That's just, the leprechaun lays out those rules at the beginning, and the film functions under them. In Leprechaun 4, that isn't really the case. The leprechaun is attempting to marry Princess Zarina, who is a princess of... Let me see. I don't think the Wikipedia page says what her home planet is. It doesn't really matter. But Princess Zarina is a princess of some planet. So the leprechaun's plan is to marry her, become king, and basically sort of take over massive amounts of the galaxy. No mention of his birthday, no mention of him turning 3,000 or whatever it is, no mention of her sneezing 3 times and no one saying God bless you, which of course would be something pretty unexpected from an alien species, because God, as he exists in Celtic Christianity and then in the mainstream US culture of the 1990s, is not something that would exist on an alien planet, but put a pin in that if you want. So there's no mention of the rules of him getting married from Leprechaun 2. Totally abandoned. But the bigger question is that you might have, and this was the question I had. What the fuck is the leprechaun doing in space? Why is he there at all? Now, in this, there is a sort of bizarre continuity with Leprechaun 3, because in Leprechaun 3, the leprechaun shows up in Vegas, or we encounter him in Vegas, when a guy with Lucky tattooed on his hand limps into a pawn shop. One hand is a hook. He's jacked up. I think he's missing an eye. He is all just fucking ruined. And he sells this pawn shop owner the statue of the leprechaun with a medallion around his neck. And the guy, call him Lucky, because he doesn't have a real character name. This is the only bit he shows up in. Is basically like, don't take the medallion off it. He takes some money from the pawn shop owner, and then he fucking pieces out. That is how the leprechaun gets to Vegas. How did he get petrified by this amulet? What is this amulet? Why does it petrify him, or later just sort of scare him? Why can people sort of use it to drive him away? No fucking clue. Leprechaun 3 makes no attempt to explain it. It does not give a shit. Leprechaun 4 does not answer the fundamental questions that a reasonable human being might ask, which are, how did the leprechaun get into space? How did he start plundering the gold mining operations of an intergalactic gold mining operation, which is what the Space Marines say that he is doing? What the fuck are these Space Marines all about? Like, how is this happening? How did this leprechaun kidnap Princess Zarina? What's going on? How is this movie even functioning? So once you get within the very constricted sphere of the film itself, it has a degree of internal coherence, right? The Space Marines are going after the leprechaun because he's been plundering gold from an intergalactic mining cartel who is displeased with the plundering of their gold, so they hire these Space Marines and Dr. Mittenhand. Not real clear why they hired Dr. Mittenhand to go, but Dr. Mittenhand is this sort of brilliant scientist. There's a little bit of a sort of Doctor Strangelove vibe. But so the Space Marines are going after the Leprechaun. They believe that they have killed the Leprechaun, mistakenly, on the basis that the Leprechaun is basically unkillable, except with a 4-leaf clover or iron or the medallion, all of which are established as his weaknesses in the first 3 films, none of which come up at all in this. And incidentally, actually, the iron thing is an interesting one, because I don't know what material their spaceship is made of, but my guess is there's some components that may have iron. So that seems potentially problematic. But again, we'll put a pin in that because the movie doesn't give a shit. So the Space Marines kill the Leprechaun. They take Princess Zarina, who has lost a hand. Dr. Mittenhand and his associates, Tina Reeves and Harold, are going to do some experiments on her, whatever it is. Mainly because Dr. Mittenhand has been like horribly disfigured, like head and shoulders, one arm, he's there. The rest of him is a cyborg. He wants to regenerate his flesh, and it turns out that on Princess Zarina's planet, they are able to regenerate lost limbs. So cool, whatever. Okay. They also take a bunch of the Leprechaun's gold. So the Leprechaun goes up on the spaceship and starts basically terrorizing them. So basically, somebody saw the movie Alien and was like, what if we did that with the Leprechaun? Is what happened, right? So you just think Alien, the seminal film, the iconic film, but dumber. And I don't mean that as like I do mean that as a judgment, but I don't mean that as like such a negative judgment. Like, it sounds very harsh to say it that way, but think of it as horror comedy that is not really concerned with issues of like coherence or I don't want to say reality, because again, reality doesn't apply. Reality doesn't come into it, but making sense necessarily within its own sort of universe rules. So, yeah, the Leprechaun goes on the ship to recover the princess and his gold, starts killing a bunch of the Space Marines. They are going after him, trying to shoot him, etc., etc. Dr. Mittenhand is doing his experiments. Tina Reeves is falling in love with Sergeant Books Malloy, etc., etc. All this bullshit is going on. And basically just a bunch of nonsense happens. Why does it happen? No clue. How does it happen? I mean, to a certain extent, it makes sense within the sort of scope of science fiction and things like this. But again, there is no attempt to connect this Leprechaun iteration with anything that's come before. There's no attempt to explain how we got here, why any of this is happening, how the Leprechaun got into space, who these Space Marines are, any of this. It's just, the film is completely uninterested in providing any rationale for what's going on. And in some ways, that's quite glorious, because it completely frees the franchise from any need to ever worry about anything. There's simply no question of, does this ever make sense? You simply treat everything as though it's acceptable, and then nothing can stop you.